Here you go.
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of 2022, the last year of this global pandemic, if history is any guide. The 1918 pandemic took 3 years to resolve, and we're beginning year 3 with COVID-19. We have all been challenged to cope with difficult situations in our work, in our families, and in our communities. There are very few of us who have come through this experience unscathed, and we will be forever changed by what we've experienced, seen, and endured. We have also persevered in our teaching, research, and service to the state of North Carolina and the wider world. And in many ways, we've thrived. The Chancellor has sent out good news in recent days, campaign goals met early, funding found to buoy our libraries, among the many daily triumphs that each of you achieve in your teaching, in your work with students, and in your research. For myself, I'm hearing a lot about students who I've gotten to know over the last few years getting great jobs. And like many of you, I've been giving references for students I've personally mentored who are on the job market. There is challenge and there is also hope. To quote Colin McCann, the great world continues to spin. We stumble on, and it is enough. Today, we will welcome new members of our administration, receive and discuss up-to-the-minute information on how Omicron may impact our campus in coming weeks, and hear from our retired faculty, in addition to other items of business. Other parts of faculty governance continue to work on other pressing issues. And my hope for this semester is that as we move out of this pandemic, we can also move out of crisis mode and focus more planfully on the business of our campus. I thank each of you for all the work that you do each day and look forward to the rest of our agenda. Chancellor Guskowitz.
Great. Thank you, Mimi. It's great to be with everyone today. As Mimi just mentioned, we're going to acknowledge a few folks that are joining the senior leadership team. And so with that, I want to introduce Chris Clemens. Most of you know Chris. He was appointed as our next Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost in December, and he'll begin his role in February. Chris has been at Carolina since 1998. And I've known him for nearly 15 years and had the opportunity to work alongside him for most of the last 7 or 8 years. And I know he's going to do a great job. As a physics and astronomy professor and the director of Carolina's Institute for Convergent Science, Chris has demonstrated a commitment to the kind of interdisciplinary work that's emphasized in our strategic plan, and I know is committed to supporting our faculty to reach our shared goals. In promoting excellence in our classrooms, our research labs, and in serving communities across North Carolina. As we all work to secure Carolina's role as a leading global public research university, I think that spirit of creative collaboration will be especially important. So I know Chris is well suited to carry out this role of Chief Academic Officer, and know that he's going to do an excellent job. And working alongside Chris as the Executive Vice Provost will be Amy Locklear-Hertel. And as you know, Amy is my current Chief of Staff and has served as the Director of the American Indian Center on campus, and has a clinical faculty appointment in School of Social Work. And I know that they're going to do a great job and will be a great team in leading the Provost office. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris to say a few words.
Thank you, Kevin. And I also want to thank all of you who sent me well wishes. Amy and I are humbled and honored to be able to serve in these roles starting in February. We're working very closely with Bob and the entire Provost office team to make sure that we're ready for the transition. So I am looking forward, as she is, to working with all of you starting in February. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And I also want to just take this opportunity to thank Provost Bob Lewin, who's done an incredible job over the past 4.5 years. And I know that the Faculty Council acknowledged Bob through a resolution at the December meeting, and I could not have had a better partner by my side over these past 3 years in leading the university. And as you well know, Bob has been a tireless advocate for our faculty, our staff, and our students, and has spent a lot of time over these past 18 to 20 months, leading our COVID response plan. And we'll hear more about that later today, but I just want to publicly, thank Bob for all that he's done for our university in this role as Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor. I want to just provide some updates now, and as I hope you had the opportunity to see yesterday, it was a special day when we announced that we passed our campaign goal of $4.25 billion. This is a milestone in the campaign. We're not finished. We have another 11 months left in the campaign. And this is a historic accomplishment for the university. We've come a long way since we launched the campaign on Polk Place in October of 2017 under that big tent that was out there. I know many of you were there for that event when we launched the campaign. And I think the impact of this effort is felt on our campus today and will benefit generations of Carolina students, faculty to come. And I mentioned that yesterday in my comments and some of the media releases that went out. And this accomplishment will help us keep our promise of affordability for all students and to meet our missions of excellence in teaching, research, and service. And you don't reach a campaign goal of $4.25 billion a year early, without incredible faculty. And as I have enjoyed getting out to meet with alumni and donors, prospective donors, many of whom didn't have a connection to Carolina before this campaign, but you don't do that without incredible faculty who make people believe in Carolina and our priorities and our promises. And so I just want to thank all of you for everything that you do, such that our alumni, our donors, they believe in us. We also don't accomplish this goal without an incredible leadership team of deans who are out there, center directors who are talking about their priorities and telling their stories about the impact of philanthropy. And we also don't do that without an incredible development team led by David Ruth and Debbie Dibbard and all the development leads in the various units around campus. And so we're grateful for all of their hard work and the roadmap that they helped build. David Ruth built about 6 years ago. So again, a lot of gratitude around this. Donating is an act of hope, as I say. Our over 200,000 donors in this campaign believe that we can turn their generosity into impact, and it's a big responsibility to live up to. And it's made possible by the extraordinary work that our faculty do every day. So again, thank you. We raise an extraordinary amount of money because you put forward extraordinary things to fund. And I will be focused now over these next 11 months as we bring the campaign to a close on raising more gifts around student scholarships and fellowships for both undergraduate and graduate students, as well as for professorships. And I've talked with several of the deans about this. This is an area where it'll help in many ways if we can. In fact, we had a meeting this morning with Dean Terry Rhodes and her team around an incredible opportunity in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience and opportunities for professorships there. And I look forward to to bringing the campaign to a close in December with more professorships and more scholarship and aid for students. And so we don't know what that final number will be in December of this year, but I know that the impact on our campus, our people, will be incredible because it's about the impact, probably less so than the actual dollar amount. In other updates, I'm also happy to share that we are going to direct $2 million to the university libraries annually, which will help relieve some of the impact of the planned journal cancellations that Vice Provost Elaine Westbrooks talked about at at least one faculty council meeting, and I think an FEC meeting back in the fall semester. Our library is critical to making us the world-class research institution that we are, and I'm confident that along with Elaine Westbrooks and her team, we'll be able to navigate these challenges. As you know, we went through budget reductions over the past 9 or 10 months. And I think through that process, there were some units that where we knew we still had some adjustments to make. And this was certainly one of those. I appreciate several of the faculty that reached out in this regard. And I'm confident that we're going to be able to work alongside Elaine and her team to better position the library for future success. So thank you. I also I wanted to take a moment to share some data with you to highlight the success that study abroad has had in engaging with the world, if you will, since the pandemic began. As you can imagine, we've talked often about aspiring to be the leading global public research university. And I think we've got the public part down. We've got the research part down as we continue to make incredible break records in terms of the amount of research funding coming in and the impact of that research. But it's the global piece of that leading global public research university that sometimes I feared, even as dean of the college and a faculty member, department chair, that maybe we weren't emphasizing enough. And when we went and hired Barbara Stevenson a few years ago to lead that effort as our new vice provost for global affairs, I knew that we were going to be on a great trajectory. And, just throughout the pandemic, some of the incredible work that her and Heather Ward and Jason Kinnear and others in study abroad were able to do is pretty amazing, given that much of the world sort of shut down operations for parts of the past 20 some months. But we kept this dream alive to continue to move in the rankings and to continue providing these opportunities for our students to study abroad. And so just some numbers here, and we've done much better than many of our peers in this regard. In the fall of 2021 semester, we had 239 students participate in study abroad office programs, which was at about 69% of pre-pandemic levels. Many other universities fell much far below that mark. This fall, we offered the new Carolina Global Launch Program, which sent 72 first year students to 3 sites in Ireland, Scotland, and Spain. And these students successfully completed their semester abroad and have started the spring semester here on campus. And this spring, we have 341 students participating in study abroad programs, and that's now 89% of pre-pandemic levels. And so, Carolina has been at the forefront of resuming study abroad programs, sending some students safely to targeted locations in the fall of 2020 and coming close to a return to full operations last fall. Some regions of the world have been unavailable throughout the pandemic, but we have been successful in returning students to Ecuador and Egypt, where our partner institutions have been able to secure safe learning environments for our students. And since we resumed sending students abroad in the fall of 2020, we've had just 2 reported COVID cases out of 465 students abroad. And so again, we're taking a lot of precaution in doing this, but I think we're doing it safely. And this success, I think, is a testament to the resilience and the ingenuity of UNC Global and our study abroad office team. And it's, again, I think among the reasons that Carolina was named the platinum winner of the APLU's 2021 Institutional Award for Global Learning, Research, and Engagement. I hope you had an opportunity to read about that. And so thank you to our study abroad team and all those, the faculty that I know support our work, our global initiatives. And so, again, we're going to get back to pre-pandemic levels. I'm confident. And but I just wanted to mention that because I think that we haven't talked much about study abroad and the global opportunities of late. So before I stop and take any questions, if we have time, Amy, I just wanted to say that we are continuing to make great progress on the searches for our 5 deanships that are currently underway. Those searches, we've had candidates on campus this week and next week for our School of Dentistry search, candidates coming to campus very soon for the School of Nursing deanship. and then probably within the next 4 to 5 weeks for the Hussman School of Journalism and Media. And then the last two are in the Gilling School of Global Public Health and our Arts and Sciences Deanship. I'll be checking in with the search committee chairs next week on those to get an update. But I want to thank all of you that are currently participating in the various search committees, and know that whenever we are bringing candidates to campus, I hope you will have a chance to interface and interact with these candidates. And I remain very confident that we have very robust applicant pools for these searches, and we'll identify leaders of these schools who are going to help carry out our mission. So with that, I'll stop, and Mimi, I'll turn it back to you if there's time for questions. And I think we have Provost Bluen coming up as well.
Yes, and I think we do have a few minutes for questions. So I know Jan Henning had put a note in the chat asking about travel restrictions that might be better suited for Provost Bluen. So we'll hold off on that one. Deb, you had mentioned you had a question.
Yes. Chancellor Gaskovich, I just wanted to congratulate you on crossing the $4.5 billion mark. It's one of the biggest accomplishments. No university in the South has done that. And I really thank you for designating $2 million for the library. I have two quick questions. One relates to the searches that you mentioned, and I was amazed at the pool of talented candidates we garnered. And as these candidates come to visit the campus, as you know, the provost office does a great job of sharing their material. And in that material, what's missing is the applicant's cover letter, which, as you know, delineates their vision, their ideas. And in the past, I looked at 5 past searches, and I know you are leading the 5 next searches. Can we just make sure that all of the candidates' letters, which truthfully outlines their vision in this critical time, is also included with the CV? Because as you will appreciate, the CV doesn't really give you a lot about what they bring in terms of their ideas and insights about the position.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask Amy Hertel to make a note of that. We'll check in with the search committee chairs to ask for how that has been done in the past, and try to provide that for everyone. And it may be, and I also need to check in with I think we need to check in with HR on that, just to be sure that there are certain parts of a candidate's sort of application materials that do remain confidential to the search committee. And before I go and promise that, Deb, I want to be sure that's not something we've told the candidates that would not be provided. CVs are one thing, a cover letter is another, but I promise you we'll look into it.
So I am not looking for any promises. It's just we are a public university, and I think the Carolina community deserves this transparency. As you know, there are other universities nationwide that do that. And in each of these searches, I noted that the search committee had asked the candidate to share a statement about diversity or how they want to do. I think it would be good for the Carolina community to read it. And of course, if a candidate doesn't want to share it, that's fine. My second question, and a quick one, relates to the funding, the wonderful fundraising we have accomplished. As you know, you designated funds for the library. But on another note, graduate studies and graduate students and graduate programs have had funding, lack of funding. I don't know about other schools, but I know of at least our school that has to do some cutbacks in terms of the number of PhD students and master students we fund. So is there any way, and I'm not looking for a promise again, is there any way we could designate some significant funds to enhance the graduate studies? Because as you know, a lot of these graduate students contribute greatly to research and teaching on our campus. Thank you.
Yep. And as I said in my comments, that is an area that we have been raising money for, working closely with the deans. And I know when I was dean of the college, it was certainly a priority. We raised a significant amount of money for graduate student support. And it is a priority for me in this last year of the campaign to do everything possible to support graduate students. So
Thank you.
Let's do one more question from George. You're muted, George.
Chancellor, I know that in some of the accomplishments of the last semester that you mentioned, maybe we should also recognize the fact that we had 3 Rhodes Scholars here at UNC named last November. And one of them, it was competed for the American Rhodes allocations, Justin Haddad, but we also had a Canadian Rhodes Scholar who was a UNC student, Timothy Mururi, and one of the African sections, Takoa Hachawako. And so congratulations to them and to Ben Waterhouse, who is the director of the Office of Distinguished Scholarships.
Yeah, George, thanks for bringing that up. I will tell you that I just, and thank you for all that you do. I know how closely you work with that office and supporting these students, these candidates and applicants for these awards. And this is the first time that we've had 3 Rhodes Scholars in a year. An hour and a half ago, I was down at the General Alumni Association bragging about you and the team and these 3 incredible students and ambassadors for Carolina who are Rhodes Scholars now and have been, advertising this as much as I can. So thanks for reminding me. I think I may have mentioned this at the December meeting, but if I hadn't, I thank you for bringing it up. We should be proud of them, and next year we're going to go for 4, right? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, George. Thank you, Chancellor. And let's move to Provost Bluen.
Thank you, Mimi. As has already been mentioned, today I think is officially my last formal meeting with the Faculty Council as Provost. And I thought that I would just take a few minutes to make a few perhaps non-traditional comments, to this body. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Mimi Chapman for all of her support during these last few years. I have very much enjoyed working with you and with Jill, as well as with your predecessors. I have learned so much from Leslie Parise and Lloyd Kramer, along with Vince Stepanidis over these last 4.5 years, and have just greatly appreciated the collaboration, developing a collegial relationship, and really feel that despite the fact that these 4.5 years have been very tumultuous across the campus in so many different ways, it has also been very rewarding for me personally. And I just want to go on record as saying that my time here as Provost, has been a phenomenal opportunity, but more so a tremendous honor for me to have the opportunity to serve this university, this great university, its faculty, its staff, and its students. And so it's been really a pleasure for me to get to know so many of you in a more personal way. I also want to just thank the Faculty Council as a body. This has not been easy these last 4.5 years for the council. You have, like administration, you have been trying to navigate yourself through some really challenging waters. We've been talking most about over the last several years the challenges that COVID has posed upon this institution. But I think we all have been talking about really multiple pandemics, including the racial crisis that we have been experiencing in this country, across the state, and this campus has not been immune to it. I look back at my 4.5 years. I can remember the very first month in September of 2017. I thought this is going to be an easy tenure as provost. We were just getting over one of our challenges with our athletics program, and I suspected that the next 5 years were going to be pretty much smooth sailing. It wasn't quite that. It really became something much more complex. It kind of started with Silent Sam, but it continued, throughout the 4.5 years. And what I think all of you should be proud of is the tremendous amount of work that you as a faculty have achieved. When I think about our standing nationally, and I know that on occasion we have taken some hits nationally. We probably were in the Chronicle of Higher Education more times than we wanted, or in higher ed more times than we wanted. But when I look at the product that we have produced here, and what is that? What do we do as an academy at a great university like this? We commit our hearts and our souls and our intellects to the development of people, to training undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students, postdocs. And we do it in a way in which we inspire them to want to do great things. And in the conduct of that inspiration and that training and teaching, we also create new knowledge. And the summation of all of that work has resulted in this university not taking a step backwards, but taking many steps forward and becoming a national, international leader in just so many different areas. It's perhaps best represented by the growth in our research expenditures, but that only tells a fraction of the story, because there are so many outstanding faculty who do work that is not funded, by NIH or NSF or by even other third parties. They do it because they have the talent and the intellect and the critical mass of talent around them to do great things. I am very optimistic about the future of this university. I believe that this is a fantastic university, and it is a fantastic university because it has a truly outstanding faculty. It is this faculty that attracts great students. And let me repeat that. It is this faculty that attracts great students. And it is this faculty that attracts great funding to support the pursuit of great ideas. And so as we think about, what makes a great university, the answer is simple. It's a great faculty. What I hope for this university moving forward is that perhaps this great faculty can work more closely, more intimately, more strategically, and more in partnership with its leadership team. I would hope that this faculty could find it within itself to be more trusting and more supportive of this administration as it tries to tackle some of the most challenging issues that we face as a great public research global university. And to find a way to work with our governing boards in a way that provides strategic alignment in order for you as a faculty, in order for your departments, your schools, and this institution to make the kind of progress that it aspires to do. All of us, our faculty, our departments, our schools.
Excuse me, Bob. Someone's not muted. Could everybody check and make sure they're muted, please?
So all of our key elements, our faculty, our departments, our schools, and our leadership need to be in alignment with our governing boards and ultimately in alignment with the intentions of the people of this state. I've always thought, that my job was pretty straightforward, to help to create an environment where faculty, staff, and students have a chance to reach their full potential, but consistent in a way that serve the people of North Carolina and the world. I've always felt that I work for the people of North Carolina. Although I report to the chancellor, Ultimately, I work for the people of North Carolina, as I believe all of us do. And sometimes we as a faculty forget that. And we forget the fact that the people of North Carolina have made a tremendous investment in this university, and that we owe the people of North Carolina our very best efforts across all of the elements of the mission of this university. I believe that we can do so much more as a great university, an aspiring university, if we were to work more closely and more in direct alignment. And then I would just ask this faculty to be more forgiving, to be more gracious, in that we make decisions at the administrative level, our deans, our provost, our chancellor, along with our governing boards, in an attempt to do what is right at that moment. These are very complex decisions. And I would hope that even when individuals disagree with those decisions, that it doesn't erode the trust that is so critical in order for us as a university to move forward together. And so I remain very hopeful and very optimistic about the future of this university. I very much am appreciative of the opportunity to have worked with Chancellor Guskowitz and all the members of the leadership team, and particularly the honor and privilege of serving as a dean and then as a provost and working in collaboration with the many outstanding deans at this university. The chancellor is right. We are continuing to attract extraordinary talent to this university. We want to make sure that when this talent arrives here, that we are able to nurture that talent and to work together to achieve the mission of this university in support of the people of this great state. And so once again, I just want to thank all of you for the support. I know that we haven't always agreed on every issue, and I think that is expected under these set of circumstances. But I have always had great respect for this body. I have always shown up and always tried my best to listen and to incorporate the ideas that the Faculty Council, and particularly the Faculty Executive Committee, offered to this university to try to make this better. I believe that this body is sincere and wants the best for this university. And I hope that it will work even more closely, more diligently with university leadership to help this leadership, help this faculty reach its full potential. So with that, I would just say thank you. And I know that there may be some questions. I can't answer Jan's question if you want, but I'll stop there and then get back to Jan's question.
Thank you, Bob. That was inspiring in many ways. Yes, do you want to take Jan's question? And then I want to keep us on schedule. I know Dr. Weber has some information for us, so I don't want to get too much.
I can be very quick with regards to Jan's question. Jan, as you know, we had a pause on international travel for the month of December, or the end of the month of December. As everybody is observing, things are changing in real time with regards to the relative risk of international travel. We have once again opened up opportunities for faculty and students, to travel internationally, and those are being actively reviewed. And for the most part, I think you'll find that most of the requests are being approved. We are mindful of some countries and some locations that may be still dangerous. And it's not just so much COVID as much as the infrastructure of the healthcare within that city or that country might be fragile and might put people at risk. But I hope that, one of the things that I think Kevin had mentioned is that I think this university had leapfrogged a lot of other universities with regards to the global mission, mainly because we have continued to allow our faculty and students to travel internationally throughout this COVID period. It's been somewhat restricted, and we want to make sure that we did it safely. But I think we have made some very good decisions along the way, and that has accelerated our global ambition. Jan, did I answer that?
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your work as a provost. I think you were a great provost.
Thank you, Jan.
Agreed. We're going to miss you, Bob. That's for sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn our attention to Dr. Weber. Dr. Weber, do you have slides you wanted to share? Looks like yes. You might be muted.
Okay, yes, I do have some slides to share. Let me put them up here. Hang on a second.
Now we can, oh, okay. You're in,
You all
there.
set? Good.
Mhm.
All right, I want to give you a very brief update about COVID and about Omicron, and then I'm happy to answer questions. Omicron, of course, a new variant. Hospitalizations, and I'll show you the data, have largely been limited to unvaccinated and immunocompromised. Omicron is the dominant variant worldwide and in the United States, highly transmissible. It escapes from most of our monoclonal antibody therapies, but we do have some therapies that work. I'll talk about that. It escapes from natural immunity, meaning previous infection, and it does have vaccines, even a fully vaccinated, meaning 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine. It does have a reduced effectiveness. We do have some advances in therapy. All are in limited supply except from remdesivir. That includes an oral drug, Paxlovid, stratuvimab, an IV single infusion, and remdesivir, a 3-day infusion. All are about 80 to 90% effective for people with mild to moderate disease and preventing infection, and we're using all of them. Molnupiravir is also an oral drug, but it's only about 30% effective, so that's our fallback drug. And we also have one advance in preventive therapy being used for immunocompromised patients, Evusheld, which is it's an IM shot into the muscles and provides roughly 6 months of prevention against COVID, including Omicron. Certainly, COVID has had a major impact in the United States, as you can see here. In both 2020 and likely in 2021, it will be the 3rd leading cause of death. Only heart disease and cancer will surpass it. There's been a drop in life expectancy, disproportionately among African Americans and Latinos, but among everybody. You can see here, some months, days, it was the leading cause of death. And there's clearly a huge age-related impact. You can see here that almost always it's the leading cause or 2nd or 3rd leading cause of death among people 65 and above. And in fact, more than 1 in 100 Americans over 65 have perished from COVID in the last 2 years. Even among children for whom it is a more mild disease, it's often in the top 5 causes of death. Another issue for COVID that even if it disappeared today will be with us for a long time is many patients, even those with mild to moderate disease, will have what's called long COVID, meaning symptoms after 4 weeks. It can affect virtually every organ system. There are many studies on this, but I picked this one out. 1 in 3 patients had 1 or more features of long COVID between 3 and 6 months after their diagnosis. That's much higher than, say, influenza. 2 in 5 of the patients who had long COVID features during this period had no record of any feature in the previous 3 months, meaning it wasn't merely exacerbating underlying diabetes, hypertension, neurologic disease, heart disease, lung disease, but was causing new disease. And the risk of having long COVID is higher in older individuals, those with more comorbidities, and those who had more severe disease. We do have a long COVID clinic here. We were the first clinic in North Carolina, supported by the dean at the School of Medicine. Dr. John Barata leads that clinic from physical medicine rehab. You can see the age distributions of the patient seen. We've seen about 700 patients so far. We do see occasional adolescents, but this clinic does not see children. So the fact that you don't have any younger group, very many in those people don't take that as an indication long COVID doesn't occur among children. It does. If you yourself, a member of your family, friend, colleague, have symptoms lasting than 4 weeks, I suggest you make an appointment to see Dr. Barada in clinic. He has well worked out ways of then referring you as needed to cardiology, pulmonary, infectious disease, et cetera, depending on your symptoms. As you know, there have been many variants of Omicron. They're named by the letters. We're up to always, Omicron. They are based on, they're impactful if they affect transmissibility, performance of diagnostics, if they escape the immune system, effectiveness of treatment, or affect severity of illness. Omicron has approximately 30 mutations in the spike protein, which is critical for it to infect people. Although it was first reported in late November in South Africa, isolates now actually date back to late October, which is why travel limitations there really had no effect on the worldwide outbreak. It's the dominant variant. I'll show you that. Has some inherent infectivity. I'll show you why. It does escape largely from natural immunity and vaccines. It is detected by our current diagnostic tests. It does escape from many of our monoclonals, but we have the therapies I mentioned. But one of the good news is it's of lower virulence there. We need to encourage everyone to be up to date, which is the CDC's new terminology for not only your initial series, but boosted universal pandemic precautions, which we follow in the hospital, and masks work, and they will work in the hospital and in the community. And we need to avoid presenteeism, having people come to work while they're ill. Here's just some of the data you can see here in the upper right, the data from based on the CDC from Omicron, now accounting, as you can see there, for about 98% of the variants in the United States. On the left, you can see as we've gone through the waves, starting with alpha and beta, moving then to Delta, the large wave we had this past summer, early fall, and now the dominance of Omicron. Down at the lower right is we sequence all our isolates at the medical center. You can see the local incidence of prevalence of Omicron just approaching 90%. Now, this disease has had a larger impact actually on young children, particularly 0 to 5 because they can't be immunized, and 5 to 11 because they're under-immunized, as well as increased exposures. So while it's had an impact on all age groups, particularly in terms of deaths on the 50 to 65-year-old age group, it's had a disproportional impact on younger individuals. Part of that, as you can see on the right, that 5 to 11-year-olds remain largely unimmunized for a variety of reasons of hesitancy. I'll go into one of those in just a minute, but certainly we need to encourage people to be immunized. Only about 2/3 of the United States, roughly, is immunized. We rank somewhere in the world between 50th and 60th in the world in our level of coverage of vaccine, and we are dropping. So we have about 20% total resistant immunization. So for the foreseeable future, those unimmunized people will come into our hospital, have severe disease, unfortunately, and die. So that's something we really need to deal with, is vaccine hesitancy and resistance. Only about 1/3 of the US population is boosted and therefore has good protection against Omicron, and that is the best preventive mechanism. You see this in the on the right in the newspapers all the time. It's true if you look at the highest risk of myocarditis, which is almost always very mild and short-lived in young individuals following an mRNA vaccine. It's about 10 per 100,000, and the highest age group is young males. But then if you look at people who were tested who were young males participating in athletics, routinely tested, you would see about 1% of them after natural COVID have cardiac involvement. So quickly you would see that the risk of having cardiac involvement is 100 times greater after COVID than it is after vaccine. So the risk-benefit ratio is for those young people to get vaccinated, but you don't see this well discussed in the news media. Forecasting Omicron's impact on UNC, first I'll point to the right. You can see about 80% of our cases in the hospital are unvaccinated, 90% of those in the ICU are unvaccinated, and about 90% dying are unvaccinated. And we haven't been able to break our data down yet by fully vaccinated versus up to date. But 2/3 of those who are vaccinated in the hospital are highly immunocompromised, and our projections are we will see increasing numbers in cases for the next couple of weeks. further stressing out our healthcare system. What about some of the epidemiology and outbreaks? Well, this is an outbreak, family outbreak cluster in Nebraska. I'll point out to you the incubation period was 33 to 75 hours with a median of only 72 hours, about 3 days. Because of this very short incubation period, classic case finding and contact tracing is not possible. So even if somebody developed symptoms on that same day that they had symptoms, they could get tested, get the result, which is difficult given test shortages, and the health department contacted everybody on that same day, which is not possible. Secondary transmission likely already would have occurred. So one of our major tools for limiting spread, just because of this short incubation period, is not possible. None of these people were hospitalized there. And you can see here, most were vaccinated, demonstrating that Omicron is highly infectious, short incubation period. Reinfection, if you've had natural disease, is common. Reduced effectiveness of vaccines, but less virulent. Here is another outbreak that is very instructive from Norway. I'll point out to you, this was a Christmas party. Every 96% were fully vaccinated. All were tested prior to the party and were negative. Nevertheless, there was a huge outbreak, 74% attack rate, again demonstrating the infectiousness and the lack of protection with full vaccine. And again, as we just saw, 3 days was the incubation period. And of course, this was a party, so people were unmasked and together for a prolonged period of time. I will point out to you this and the many, many outbreaks now on cruise ships with 10,000 plus people infected on cruise ships. Testing is not a prevention strategy. Let me say that again. Testing is not a prevention strategy. Masking and vaccines are prevention strategies. Testing may be a strategy for early detection and help with containment, but given the very, very short incubation period for this disease, testing has limited ability to protect people. So even if you've tested negative and you go to a grouping where people are unmasked and they're tested negative, that will not prevent transmission. In terms of this is very instructive. We are seeing large numbers of people who are asymptomatic. These are just people being entered into a variety of studies in South Africa, and they were tested when they came into the study to see if they had COVID, and you can see they were running between 0.6 and 3% in previous waves. And then you look at Omicron, 30% were infected. Just looking at our most recent data at UNC, where we test people coming in for admission to prevent transmission in units like psychiatry, a little over 20% of asymptomatic individuals were testing positive there. So just showing the importance of asymptomatic carriage and the high rates we're seeing now with Omicron. If you look at on this very nice webpage, which does look at the ability of Omicron to be covered by monoclonal antibody therapy or vaccines, you would see two of the monoclonal antibodies we are using, so Truvimab and Evusheld, the first for treatment, the second for prophylaxis, do retain activities. You would see carefully, if you go to this, and the slides will be made available to you, that being fully vaccinated offers some, but only limited protection. Being boosted does give you a good protection. I'll show you some data later on. So here is just some of the data. You can see here after dose 2 that it is much less effective in preventing symptomatic disease than it was against Delta. You can see after you get boosters, and the Moderna booster is a little more effective, but you get a tremendous boost. And most of the studies would suggest being fully vaccinated is about 30% protective at the current time for symptomatic disease, 70% for serious disease. Getting boosted drives that up in general to about 70% for symptomatic disease and 80+% for preventing against serious disease. So getting boosted is the main way to protect yourself against Omicron. This was a report from a large group cooperative health plan in South Africa. Again, as I already said, 30% protective against infection, 70%, these are fully vaccinated people, against severe complications. In terms, if you've already had infection with the Delta wave, you have a 40% increased risk of a reinfection with Omicron. Keep in mind, people who have had a natural infection under Delta had a 5.5 higher fold risk than fully vaccinated people. So that's why people, even if you've had natural infection, you should get a vaccine, actually get a full series of vaccines. But the risk of hospitalization, 30% lower. I'll show you some data here. That's also true in the United States. That said, if the number of cases in the US go up tenfold, even a lower risk of severe side effects has and is overwhelming hospitals across the US. And data does suggest children are having increased risk against Omicron, largely because they're not vaccinated. Clinical outcomes, this just a brand new paper just released from California. You can see here the Omicron variant were much less likely to be admitted to the hospital. And then if they came into the hospital, they have a much shorter course of stay. And you can see the differences between, this is S gene dropout. It's a surrogate measure for Omicron. And you can see purple versus S gene dropout, which is Omicron largely. The differences in need for mechanical ventilation, mortality, ICU admission, just showing again that fortunately this is less virulent. That said and done, we've had about 850,000 deaths from COVID since the pandemic began, and we're on track that by middle of the spring we'll reach 1 million. Why is this so? This was an instructive study where they did culturing or they did PCR and looked at cycle times, a surrogate measure for amount of virus. They found the amount of virus in the bronchus is 70 times higher than in Delta, which may explain some of the increased infectivity. But in the lung tissue, it was 1/10 as high, which would explain the lower virulence. So a biophysical correlate that explains some of the epidemiologic findings. Isolation and quarantine, you're all familiar with the new CDC guidelines, which say you can end isolation after 5 days if you're fever-free for 24 hours, use without fever-reducing medications, and symptoms have improved. They do recommend you wear a mask for the next 5 days. I will tell you that this is really designed for political reasons to maintain critical infrastructure. The majority of people at day 5 remain infectious with Omicron. The antigen tests are less sensitive. Some of them will turn at day 5, but that's not an indication one's not non-infectious. The PCR tests, more sensitive, will remain positive. I'm not going to show you data from UNC, but when we've tested our healthcare providers at 5 days, 100% were positive by PCR, and 80% would have been positive by antigen testing at day 5. I'll also point out to you, so not only do people remain infectious, but I'll point out to you that early in the course of Omicron, antigen testing, home tests may result, as you can see here in those red little triangles there, that you can get false negative results in the first few days because of the rapid short incubation period and then rapid rise. So you can get a false negative test early in that period with antigen testing. So one needs to be aware of that. I will also point out that if you can get false positive tests, for instance, if it's not approved for that use, if you swab the pharynx, people have been talking about that because they have higher rates. Those rates are higher because they're false positive, since low pHs, let's say you've been drinking Coca-Cola or orange juice, can turn a test falsely positive. So if you are using a home test, you need to follow the recommendations explicitly. We have a number of drugs. We have one drug we can use to prevent infection. We have a number of drugs that we can use to treat people. This is for outpatient therapy after they become infected. If you have signs or symptoms of COVID, obtain a test, particularly if you're at an at-risk group for progression. Then give us a call if it's positive, and we will try and provide you therapy. We also have therapy, a variety of therapies for people who are sick enough to come into the hospital. I certainly realize that we all feel like we're playing whack-a-mole with variant after variant, and that this is a tidal wave, but we do have some positive things on the horizon. The number of cases in New York and in the UK in the last week have turned down. They were earlier in the Omicron wave than the US. I personally expect we'll have increasing cases here, probably for about 2 weeks, then cases will start trending down. but at a very high level with this surge persisting until March, mid-March or so. But I do believe the stresses we have with increasing cases will begin trending down in about 2 weeks. And I want to thank all of you for what you do for both our research efforts, our education to the community, which is absolutely crucial during this pandemic, and for continuing to educate our students. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think we have a lot of questions, but we also have a lot of gratitude, Dr. Weber, for this presentation and for taking your time to really give us this level of detail. So thank you so much for doing that. Jennifer, I see Jennifer McEntee. I see your hand up.
Hey, Dr. Weber, this is Jen. Thank you so much for all of your work that you've done in the hospital and for our community. I was wondering, do we know the outcomes or the probability of getting long COVID with Omicron?
The answer is no, because by definition, you have to be more than 4 weeks after symptoms.
Got it.
Obviously, South Africa really isn't equipped to see those people, and we don't have a long enough experience in a developed country to answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
Vaughn Upshaw.
Thank you. Thank you so much for continuing to provide such great education to all of us, Dr. Weber. This is maybe a question more broadly, but related. After yesterday's ruling by the Supreme Court that will not require organizations to have to follow OSHA orders for employee protections, what kind of preparation are we expecting to see on campus for students, employees, faculty, staff to ensure going forward? Because the pandemic's not going to go away, right? We're going to continue to have to respond, and we don't want to play whack-a-mole, as Dr. Weber just indicated. How can we begin to think now about what kind of things we will continue to do? And you might have some suggestions for us to think about now based on all the work that you're saying. I just would love to hear that. Thank you.
Well, first of all, the decision by the Supreme Court prevents the government from making, through OSHA, requiring immunizations. It doesn't require private employees to follow that. They can make that, and that would certainly be the best way. For those that don't want to or can't use by state rules, mandates, we can provide incentives. Nothing in the rule prevents us from providing incentives, as well as town halls and education to clarify much of the miseducation, such as that vaccines affect fertility, for instance. They clearly don't. And being pregnant, actually, the worst thing for a fetus is for mom to get COVID. And the vaccines are safe and effective in pregnancy and recommended by all the obstetrical gynecologic societies for that reason. So that's one thing that we can do, is continue to push for vaccines and push for use of boosters, making them free, easily available to all groups, particularly disadvantaged groups that may have trouble reaching them. Certainly giving them out through pharmacies was excellent. Second of all, masks work. They work just as well against Omicron as they worked against any other variant that doesn't affect the basic nature of a virus. So people who are risk adverse, or particularly those at high risk for adverse events, wearing your mask and going to venues where everyone else wears the mask is critical. When I talk about double masking, I think masks clearly on the infected person dramatically decrease expulsion of infectious particles. Mask worn properly in the uninfected person prevent that. I personally don't believe we need KN95 or N95s. We need to properly wear a medical mask. There are simple ways to give a better fit: a hair clip behind the head, tying the knot where it comes out of the mask, or wearing a gaiter over a medical mask. All give you dramatically increased efficiency of the mask, which is demonstrated by our own scientists work in the EPA building like Dr. Bennett, and get very close to actually an N95. So those are the prevention mechanisms there that we can and should continue to use. When you're not masked, physical distancing works as well.
Let's see. Did I see other hands? Allison?
Sorry, I'm taking notes and I just wanted to confirm. So for you, Dr. Weber, thank you so much for this. A KN95 or an N95 mask are not necessary. A surgical mask by itself when properly fitted, is effective, or a surgical mask and a cloth mask? I'm sorry, I missed that piece.
So the difference between a medical mask and a surgical mask is they both work the same. The only difference is a surgical mask is fluid resistant. So we use it in the OR to prevent, if there's splatter of blood, that it won't penetrate. Either of them works just as well against COVID. They work extraordinarily well. We don't see cases of COVID in our hospital. Our colleagues for 2 years outside of taking care of known and suspected COVID patients wear medical masks, and we clearly have asymptomatic people in the hospital, but we don't see any transmission. Nevertheless, you can improve the efficiency of that just by simply making sure it's a better, tighter fit, and or if you want wearing something over it like a gaiter or cloth mask, that should go on top of the medical mask, not underneath if you want to do that. The problems with the KN95s, first of all, many of them are counterfeit. They're not standardized like an N95. They're sized, so you have to wear the proper size. So if it's too large or too small, you're not going to get a good fit. So a properly fit medical mask works better than an improperly fit N95. Plus, they're also somewhat harder to breathe through. So you see a lot of people periodically pulling the mask down around their neck to take breaths. Well, that doesn't work if you're with near other people. So again, wearing a medical mask 100% of the time is better than wearing a KN95 80% of the time. And I will remind people, one, that masks need to cover mouth and nose. There's more virus in the nose than the mouth, although we still see a lot of people with masks around the mouth, but not the nose. It doesn't work. And if you're a guy and have facial hair, that severely diminishes the capability of a medical mask or any mask to protect you. So you need to, again, everyone needs to make their own risk-benefit calculations, but that will severely impact negatively on the ability of the mask to protect you.
I'm going to bring in just a few questions from the chat so they don't get lost in the stream before going back to other people asking questions. So Professor Kramer asks, is it likely that people will need a second booster at some point in coming months? Is one booster going to be adequate? And then the second question from Professor Lithgow is there research that Dr. Weber could refer us to about the protective factors of KN95, K94 masks versus other well-fitting masks? And if so, maybe you could put that in the chat later.
Yeah, people have studied KN95s, and again, since they're not made to specific specifications, they're supposed to be certified by the country where they came from, but oftentimes the one problem is it's the certification system's really lacking in enforcement, and two, there are many different ones out there that really are incorrectly labeled. They're fraudulent masks there, and I will provide some references for that. What was the other part of the question there that you wanted me to answer?
I think the first question was about a second booster being required in coming months.
So right now, everybody who's eligible for a third shot should get one. If you're immunocompromised, you would have had a primary series for immunocompromised person is considered 3 doses. So you're now eligible for a 4th dose, and you should certainly get that. That would be 5 months after your 3rd dose for immunocompromised people. In terms of a booster for others, you can get one 5 months after your 2nd shot. How many additional vaccines we may need is unclear at this time. We'll have to see. I personally think that really a primary series should be defined really as 3 doses. 0-1, which is what we use for the mRNA vaccine, 0 and 1 month roughly, really is inadequate to provide long-term protection, and immunity was waning fairly rapidly over 6 months to a year. We'll just have to wait and see. The companies Moderna and Pfizer by March will have Omicron-specific boosters. Whether we'll need those, we'll just have to wait and see, and whether we'll need yearly boosters, much like flu shots, again, we'll just have to wait and see. The presumption is that at least the companies are working under the presumption we will need these and are working on developing them and studying them and getting them approved. Whether we actually will need them, we'll just have to wait and see. But again, the biggest problem in society is that 20 to 25% who are unvaccinated, who will for the foreseeable future get Omicron or the next variant, come into the hospital, be very sick and die. And that will be a group that has increased morbidity and mortality for the foreseeable future.
Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Weber. This has just been an incredibly helpful presentation. I wanted to circle back to your comments about the day 5 recommendation. I thought that was incredibly important. And of course, the CDC guidance is very clearly laid out that, 5 days after, even if you still have symptoms, 5 days after the start of symptoms, as long as you don't have a fever, you're fine. Now, what I'm thinking about right now are our students. Many of my undergrads are ill. And I wonder what your recommendation would be for them and how long they should isolate and how they know that they should end. Because from your description, the advice coming from the CDC is perhaps not robust enough. Thank you.
Well, I want to make 2 points. We can use time. All the studies show, both with Omicron and all the earlier variants, that somebody who is not hospitalized and is not immunocompromised, they only excrete viable virus for up to 10 days. Some may be shorter, none are longer. So by day 11, people can safely take their masks off and be able to go back to work or stay at home without transmitting. Within that day 6 to day 10, CDC freely admits that up to 30% may be infectious. Nevertheless, if they really do wear their mask and everyone around them is masked, and the only time they're with other people is unmasked, is separated by 6 feet, the chance of transmission is very, very low because masking largely prevents expulsion of materials and largely prevents inhalation. I'm not worried about risks in the classroom where everybody is masked and really that is the standard. Certainly going to bars when no one's masked and eating is a bad idea. And just going to the supermarket, if you pick a supermarket where there are a lot of unmasked people, that also might be putting you at risk there. But I'm not worried about the environment here there. By mild to moderate disease, I'm talking about symptoms not severe enough to require hospitalization, essentially there. So sore throat, runny nose, cough, low-grade fevers, muscle aches and pains, feeling fatigued. They're not serious shortness of breath, cardiac problems, or the need to be in the hospital really is the way we would define mild to moderate disease. But even if you have mild to moderate disease, and if you're at a high risk group, meaning organ transplant, chemotherapy, obesity, diabetes, age over 65, then you need to call your healthcare provider as soon as you have symptoms, get tested early, because we do have multiple therapies that I mentioned that reduce the risk of hospitalization and serious progression by 80%, and we certainly want to make those available to all of the people who need it. We have been giving somewhere between 500 and 600 infusions a week of monoclonal antibodies, for instance, to prevent that. We now have oral therapies that work as well.
So, Dr. Weber, I wanted to ask you a question about, some people are sort of saying there's no way to avoid Omicron. We shouldn't try to avoid it, or maybe that second part is implied, but that there is, whether we stay home, whether we go out, the masking is a good thing to do, but that this is just around and the likelihood is we're all going to get it. I mean, do you see it that way, or how do you see it? And is it important that we try and get ourselves from getting it if we haven't already?
So a part depends how risk adverse you are. Given the increased infectivity and the limited protection from natural disease or full vaccination, again, boosters are critical. Probably, I would guess, more than half of the United States ultimately will get it, and that's the same what has been said in Europe as well and what Dr. Fauci has said. But they're getting it, again, because they have chosen not to receive a booster shot and or not to, in the next 6 weeks, stay within a household bubble and wear a mask when they leave for a variety of reasons. I think, again, if you're older, very young, you have people older, young, or immunocompromised that you would have contact with unmasked, then you want to take maximum precautions. I don't think it's inevitable we'll all get Omicron. You just have to be willing to follow those rules that we've said, and there are certain restrictions. And I do think the Omicron wave will largely be over by the end of March or April, and we'll be able to get back barring another variant, much more normal life there. So it depends how risk adverse you are. I don't think it's inevitable, and I don't think Omicron parties are a good idea. I never thought chickenpox parties were a good idea. The risks were low, but in my younger days, I took care of many patients with serious problems from varicella, such as encephalitis and other severe problems that led to deaths, which have largely been eliminated by vaccine.
Okay, thank you. I see in the chat, Jan has a question about the N95 masks, and it looks like Hillary has additional questions. So maybe the two of you could jump in and ask your questions about masks.
So you already answered most of my questions, but I had a question about reusing masks. So for example, if I have a N95 or KN95 mask, how many days can I wear it before I should throw it away?
So there are a couple of issues about reusing the mask. Certainly, in the past, when we've had shortages, we have reused them for up to 5 days. They're certainly, if they're not fitting tightly or the rubber is stretching, then they're not as effective, or if they have rips or tears, then you should discard them. You have to be careful if you're in a situation where the outside of the mask may have become contaminated, like, for instance, being, in a restaurant or in other gathering where there are lots of people close by, then you have to worry the outside of the mask may have been contaminated. SARS-CoV-2 is not particularly hardy in the environment, but does live for minutes to hours, which means do hand hygiene, waterless alcohol product, or wash your hands when you take the mask off. Put it in a paper bag with the outside down, and then wash your hands again. And when you take it out, wash your hands, put it on, and wash your hands again. So you have to be worried about self-contamination. Ideally, you would use just one once a day, but if you have to reuse it, that is the best way to do it safely. If you're reusing, not that we need to, but if you were reusing a medical mask, the best way to do it is fold it so the inside folds together, only the outside is showing, so the inside remains non-contaminated. Put it in a paper bag. Again, follow those hand hygiene suggestions that I already made. Another option for your N95, but again, this is getting more complex, is to put the N95 on and then put a medical mask or just a homemade mask over it. That would prevent contamination of the outside, and then either throw the medical mask out each day, or for homemade mask, wash it each day. That would help protect the underlying mask from becoming contaminated. But the most important thing is to really make sure you have a good seal on your KN95 or N95, though it really fits well around your face and is tight fitting. Otherwise, it largely defeats the purpose of the improved filtering capacity. And there are all sorts of sites on the web that you can look up that will help you identify counterfeit KN95s.
Thank you. Professor Holland wants to know how people in the medical center are doing, those that are involved in patient care, not from the standpoint of getting disease, I don't think, but from the standpoint of morale.
Exhausted would be the best way to describe it. We have all sorts of programs in the hospital for helping to take care of each other. In fact, just today we had a slide presentation on that, and I'm happy to send that to you if you want to post it. We're very concerned about the mental health of our colleagues who are largely exhausted by a lot of people being out sick from community transmission, frustrations with dealing with unvaccinated people who, when they recover or when they don't, with their family saying, if we only knew, we would have had them vaccinated if we knew this could happen. That creates lots of frustrations. Working extra shifts while at the same time having to deal with problems with daycare and childcare and all the other issues and shortages that we've all had. But we have lots of programs in the hospital to support each other, both for physical health and for mental health.
Well, we sure appreciate all of you and what you've been going through. So our hearts are with you. Hillary, it looks like you want to follow up on a question, and then well, we still have a little time, so we're okay for a few more questions.
I so appreciate your time answering all these questions. Thank you. And thanks to Dr. Holland for asking that question. That's something that's on all of our minds. So yeah, thank you for everything you're doing. I just wanted to follow up on I feel like I got some conflicting information from reliable sources that there might be some real additional protection if I have a well-fitted KN95 versus a surgical mask, but maybe I misread or misunderstood that. I certainly understand that if you take the mask off, you lose the protection, or that the difference just may not be significant enough to make a difference. I know for a lot of folks who are in a small room with people who are positive, who turn out the next day to be positive. It's just, if there is any additional protection that's worth knowing about, I don't know whether that extra mile is worth it. And I'd be curious on any advice you have there.
So I'm certainly not opposed to people wearing a KN95 or an N95. Again, it needs to be the proper size. And we actually have a video here that shows people how to do seal checks at the hospital. And I'll see if I can get that posted as well. And you have to make sure it's not a counterfeit, and some studies have suggested as many 50% of them may be counterfeit. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I don't know that it's necessary compared to the things I said, which is only being around masked people, and if you're ill, being home, etc. But I'm certainly not opposed to people wearing it if they do it properly.
Yeah. That's really helpful. Yeah, I think just when you're in a room where you can't quite monitor whether people are masked properly, it's just comforting to feel like you have that extra protection. If it's possible to share that video, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can make sure the video is shared.
Dr. Weber, thank you so much. I do want to switch gears because Jill has reminded me that Desiree Rickenberg is here from the Office of Student Affairs, and we wanted to have her just give us a reminder about when we need to use the excused absence policy, when we don't need to. There's a lot of confusion around this. There's some specific work being done on clarifying that policy, but to understand how to use it now, as we are in this particular moment in the pandemic. Desiree, do you want to jump in?
Sure, I'm happy to do so, Mimi, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. I by no means wanted to step in on Dr. Weber's great information. His data and insight is wonderful. I think regarding the University Approved Absence, I think someone actually asked a really great question around kind of how to be able to discern a little bit around students' requests to be able to be absent. And it's a really great place to be able to build off of understanding and recognizing that faculty have the ultimate ability to provide flexibility and provide excused absences and accommodations for students who are indicating they have been impacted by COVID. That said, any student that tests positive for COVID should be submitting their test results through Campus Health if they have not already tested at Campus Health. So obviously, if they've tested at Campus Health, we've already got that information. That will then trigger an automatic response that will not only provide the students a host of resources and support information, whether you live on or off campus, but it will also trigger a document that will serve as their university approved absence. Students are then instructed to be able to take that document and share that with the faculty for the classes that they may be impacted and need those absences for. The document was updated such that it provides the clarification around the updated CDC and university guidelines around isolation and quarantine. And while students should be permitted to definitely isolate for 5 days, there are some students who may be isolating for up to 10 days just due to symptoms. And then any student who needs to be absent for longer than 10 days due to symptoms or some other conflict, we will then in the university approved absence office send out extensions from that point. Again, though, we're really encouraging students and faculty to be able to work closely together, and for faculty to recognize you do not need to seek approval from the university approved absence office to approve a student and or to work with them around making adjustments to assignments, exams, and we really encourage you to be able to do that. I will share with you as of this morning, when I met with the coordinator in our university approved absence office, since the beginning of the semester, which was just this week, we have about 2,000 university approved absences that have been submitted, whether that's for COVID or for other related absences. And so just keep in mind that there are a number of students that are out there, and the more that we can partner with faculty and encourage you all to work directly with students, the quicker we're also going to be able to address absences for other students that are in critical needs. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And if it's helpful, I realize that some faculty don't see the template that the university approved absence for COVID related illness. I'm happy to be able to share a kind of template with you, Mimi, and others that you guys can post so faculty know what these will look like, and also with an understanding that students are on their honor to submit them truthfully, and we will we'll be holding them accountable in that way.
Thank you, Desiree. I see Bob has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mimi.
Desiree?
Yeah, thank you, Mimi. I just want to reinforce one thing that Desiree said, and that is that faculty and students can handle this themselves, that it doesn't have to go through Desiree's office, particularly if it centers around COVID. And this is where I think a lot of the confusion has been, particularly around the students who are trying to get a quick response from the faculty member. They're very nervous. They're very anxious about losing ground and wanting to make sure that that they have the support of the faculty member, and waiting for them to go through Desiree's office, given the tremendous volume that's been directed in that way, is just not efficient. So I think that's a very important point for you, for all of the faculty to understand. They have the authority to manage this between themselves and the student. Correct, Desiree?
You are correct. And I would say if the provost says it is so, then it is so.
At least for a couple weeks.
Thank you. I'm getting questions. Allison's asked a series of questions in the chat about students being provided medical and surgical masks. I believe they are not, although there are mask stations around campus. A policy on providing hybrid options for all students. No, that is, and please correct me if I'm wrong. And updates on data. Yes, the dashboard is up and data that gets updated.
Yeah, on the last question, the dashboard gets updated daily, somewhere around noontime, and it I think is accurate as of today.
Sorry, thank you so much. I want to just follow up on the second one. So there's no policy on hybrid option either way. Like you can do it if you want.
Bob?
I think that a lot of this depends on what we've tried to do is to give faculty a lot of flexibility. And there are some classes in which, say, doing streaming is not pedagogically appropriate for that class. So we've been reluctant to say that every class, needs to be live streamed and made available synchronously. We have been encouraging all faculty to record their classes and make them available asynchronously, and where possible, make them available synchronously. But we do know that faculty, not every class is conducive, to synchronous delivery or what we might call blended or high flex learning. So that's the caveat to that. I think that most of the courses are going to be covered by either synchronous or asynchronous options.
I'm sorry, but it's at the faculty's discretion about whether or not they do the simultaneous Zoom participation with in-person participation.
It is, because we want to be mindful that there are some courses that, pedagogically just aren't conducive to it, or there are some classroom situations, although we have invested a tremendous amount of money in upgrading the technology in all of our classes. Not all classes are built the same, nor are as easy, to provide that synchronous delivery. But I think for the most part, the majority of the courses can be covered in that way.
Thank you.
Okay. And a follow-up question from Hillary.
Hi. Just to follow up about the hybrid high flex, I was thrilled to use that last year because it did work so well to Zoom when even if I didn't have just to record the classes that way, and I thought it would work for all classrooms. This semester I'm in one of the non-hybrid classrooms. And when you record your video in Zoom in those classrooms, it's practically inaudible for the students. And so I don't know what percent, it was news to me. I just thought, oh, this works so wonderfully. This is a great solution. And I didn't realize it didn't work in all classrooms. So I just wondered if the university had any resources that we could use to kind of jerry-rig solutions to be able to create a hybrid functional situation in classrooms that haven't been updated yet.
Yeah, Hillary, I would just suggest contacting Rick Winofsky, and he can and members of his team can check out that particular classroom or your particular situation. They're willing to do anything that is technically feasible, to help you teach the way you want to teach.
Thanks so much.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, I think that is it for questions on this. Thank you so much to our guests, our panelists, Dr. Weber. Thank you. A number of people would be interested in having your slides posted if you're willing to do that. If you'll send them to us in the Office of Faculty Governance, if you're willing, we'll post them. If not, we understand.
I'm happy to let you post.
Okay, thank you. And of course, this meeting is recorded. It always is. And so people can go back and watch it again if they want to. Let's move on to annual reports. Jill, do you want to take over at this point?
We have the Retired Faculty Association with us today before we get to the annual report.
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Okay, I apologize. Yes, please let me introduce Professor Donna Falvo and Professor Thomas Clegg. For those of you that don't know them, they are emeritus professors and they have done our faculty a tremendous service by the guide that they have put together related to retirement, and they want to tell us about that today. And I may be taking use of it very soon. Donna and Thomas. Tom, I think you're muted.
Is that better? No?
I can hear you, Donna. I can't hear Tom.
Okay. Well, I'm going to speak first and then I'll introduce Tom. I just wanted to say, as president of the Retired Faculty Association, and on behalf of the Retired Faculty Association, we are so pleased to be able to present this faculty retirement planning guide to you today. It's the result of about 4 years of focused small group discussion in the Retired Faculty Seminar, which was at the Institute of Arts and Humanities, and as well as feedback that we received from other faculty, other retired faculty throughout campus. This guide would not have been possible without the strong support of the Provost office and in particular, Vice Provost Ron Strauss. And it definitely wouldn't have been possible without the very hard work and dedication of Retired Faculty Association members Tom Clegg, Maria Perdue Stone, and Barbara Wasick. They worked closely with Cherie Harmon, with Joe Williams, with Hillary Hall from the Office of Human Resources, and assembled and edited the version of the retirement guide that you're going to have presented to you today. And so in saying that, I'd like to present Retired Faculty Association member and Executive Committee member, Tom Clegg, to discuss it further. Tom.
Thank you, Donna, and thanks to the Faculty Council for allowing us to present this guide today. I'd like to share my screen, if you will. Let me see if I can do that. That's not what I want to share here. Hang on. Okay. So can I do this? I'm not an expert at this. I haven't had to teach classes in a while. Here we go. Can you see me? See this? Wait a minute. That's not going to do it. Share. Can you see my PowerPoints?
No.
No. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Here, I share screen.
And you have to click on it on your desktop.
That's, click on it on my desktop. Here we go. I'm sorry. All right.
Do you want to send it over to Helena by email?
Let me go ahead and talk without it. I will just have it on my, I'll have it here and go ahead and talk. I'm sorry. I had it ready to sort of guide us through and I thought it would be a help. But this retired faculty guide, why do we need a new guide? There are lots of resources on the website, on websites, but so why do we need a new one? The guide really provides UNC specific information, and it's resulted from feedback from faculty in these retired faculty seminars, recently retired faculty, many of whom had encountered problems in trying to execute their retirement, and even many years after retirement, still having troubles with problems associated with their university relationships, getting America's status, other such things. So as a result of that, we found about 50% of the faculty involved in these discussions had difficulties, and we began to think that we really need to fix this. And the guide is a result of that. About 30 people have contributed to the information in this guide, and it's their problems which have been highlighted and which have driven the content of this guide. We really all feel that the main goal here is to try very hard to make sure that current and future faculty will be able to plan and execute their transition to retirement with many fewer hurdles than many of us have been. So that was the driving fixture of this whole process. Then how did we do this? The guide has been put together over, as Donna said, over a period of about 4 years. It's now being posted by the Office of Human Resources on their website. It's also being reposted a link to it on the Faculty Council website. It's it'll always be updated. It's intended to be the basically the guide to the problems that are frequently faced by faculty. And it's going to be updated periodically as needed, depending on how the federal and the UNC system and state and UNC-Chapel Hill practices and rules change. So we always hope to have this available for download on the OHR website. And we intend for it to be the official up-to-date UNC resource for faculty retirement information topics or information and topics. So what is in the guide? what's the content? There is some introductory material, but basically the guide is divided into 4 parts. There's a part about early career. You have to choose your retirement plan within 60 days of your entering and starting your employment at UNC. You either choose the state retirement plan, defined benefit plan, or you choose the optional retirement plan, which is administered by either TIAA or the Fidelity company. You then, once you've done that, say you're beginning to be in mid-career, most people, even though they have retirement plans, OHR or the state retirement plan, they begin to think about how else they might invest to make sure they have enough to retire. In fact, all of the retirees involved in these discussions think that's a good idea. So there are ways that people can get that kind of information. And the UNC system implements this by offering to faculty, making sure they have contracts with TIAA and Fidelity to make sure that the advice that people in those companies give to our retirees is advice which is in their own best interest. They cannot sell you anything on commission. That's not the way they operate. They're on salary. Likewise, there's another company, Cap Trust Advisors. We get information from them about coming to have personal interviews with them to help. They can help with this retirement investments and other investment advice. Cap Trust Advisors also is under contract with UNC administration, the system administration, and that contract also says they act as a fiduciary. They're not selling you anything on commission. They can recommend things that they have to sell, but they must do that with your interest in mind. Another section of the guide deals with late career issues. As you begin to approach retirement age, finding your path through pre-retirement questions. And a lot of this is more generic. It's available in many places, but the UNC specific information, for example, is with the phased retirement program. What are the questions? What are the key questions about the phased retirement program? How do you work your way through that? What's the best process by which you consider that? Who's eligible for that? All of that is considered in the guide. And then finally, the last section of the guide deals with executing your transition to retirement. You've sort of retired now. How do you maintain your contacts with the university? What university resources remain available to you in retirement? And how do you gain access to them? This is 30 pages worth of information, which then is available within the guide, highly focused, and is really aimed at trying to answer the kinds of questions that the faculty who were involved in this think were most important. Finally, how have we been publicizing the guide, and what kind of feedback are we seeking? We're advertising the guide and making it better. That's the goal. The Office of Human Resources has sent memos about the guide, announcing its availability to all faculty, all deans, directors, and department chairs, all department unit managers and HR managers. And the latter is very important. One of the big problems is that there's so much turnover in HR personnel across campus that within individual units, HR people simply, although they're working for the Office of Human Resources, they simply don't have all of the correct information. And much of the problem, many of the problem cases that have come up are because unit managers simply didn't know, or actually provided in a few cases, incorrect advice to faculty. So that we hope this will correct that kind of lack of information. And also articles about the guide now have appeared on the OHR website, Office of Human Resources, on the faculty governance website, and there is an upcoming article in the Well, the online website that we get almost daily, I guess, daily on 5 days a week. As far as feedback, the Retired Faculty Association seeks suggestions for additions or corrections to the guide. We plan a continuing cooperative program with the Office of Human Resources to take the suggestions and try to update the guide, advertise it, the guide's availability. We want you to advertise the guide's availability to your faculty friends, and we really would like to have as much feedback as possible that would improve the guide. And so we ask that you send all of your suggestions for corrections or improvements to our Retired Faculty Association, and the address is rfa@unc.edu. That's the Retired Faculty Association, rfa@unc.edu. With that, I'll stop my presentation and be happy to take any questions that people might have. Thank you very much.
Tom and Donna, thank you so much. This is such a helpful resource to have, and I really appreciate knowing that it's going to be sort of a living document that will be able to be changed and modified. So thank you. I know it's been a labor of love on your part and very intensive, and it's very thorough and very helpful. So thank you for doing that. Do we have questions before we move to our next agenda item? Okay, hearing none. Now, Jill, I'll turn it over to you.
Amy, and thank you, Tom and Donna, for being here to share that with us today. What we're moving on to next is the annual committee reports that we're receiving by title today. You're probably familiar with that language that we use now when we provide reports, committee reports, for you in advance to look at, and then we come to you and ask for you to accept the reports by title. What this means is that there's an opportunity for you to ask questions of any of the committee chairs who are presenting their reports today, and then after we have a moment for questions, I'll ask if we can accept them by title. The reports that we have today are from the Committee on Appointments, Promotion, and Tenure, and the chair of that is Professor Stuart Gold. We have the Committee on University Government. The chair of that committee is Professor Joy Renner. And then we have the Faculty Assembly Delegation, and the chair of that is Professor Jan Honig. Are there any questions from anyone about any of these reports? Okay. Seeing none, I propose that we accept these reports by unanimous consent, which does not require a motion or a vote. If we proceed by that route, then all present are recorded as having voted in favor of accepting the reports. If there's an objection, then we proceed to a motion and we have a vote. Is there any objection to accepting these reports by unanimous consent? Raise your hand, wave, shout out if you object. Leisha, are you objecting to accepting the reports by unanimous consent? No. Okay. Is there any objection to accepting the reports by unanimous consent? Okay, without objection, the reports are accepted by unanimous consent. Mimi, do you want me to move on to the next item, which is our final committee report, and it's also a closed session. So we've got several procedural steps to move through for this one. We do need to go into closed session in order to consider a special report of the Honorary Degree and Special Awards Committee. That's going to require us to ask our guests to leave, and we will stop the live stream. When we do that, we will come back into open session to adjourn, because that's what we're required to do. But I don't believe we have any business following this, just for everyone's information. So the chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session to prevent the premature disclosure of the names of the proposed recipients of these special awards. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I saw Joy. Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that was Renee. Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the motion to go into closed session? Okay, then we will vote by poll. Please be aware that in compliance with the open meetings law prohibition on secret votes, the poll produces a report that associates names with votes. Helena, can you open? Hearing no objection, I'm going to ask Helena to return us to open session and let us know when we're back in, and then we'll wrap up the meeting.
It's not showing up. We are in open session.
All right, very good. So at this point, thank you, Jill, and thank you to Lloyd for presenting those candidates. Thank you for everyone for being here today and for your attention and your good questions and comments. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Let's just do it by voice vote or by waving, yes, or whatever.
Aye.
Wants us to do.
Bye bye.
In February. Bye-bye.
Look at Sharon's face.